Hello and welcome back to the Wheel Talk podcast. My name is Abby Mickey and we are here to talk about women's professional road cycling this week. We're going to talk about Strade Bianche and look forward to Trofeo Alfredo Binda. With me today, we've got the crew. Loren Rowney.
G'day everyone. Good to be back.
Gracie Alvin.
Hello. Sorry for my horrible voice. I'm a little bit sick at the moment.
Too excited about Strade?
Yeah, a little bit. Got all that dust in my nostrils.
Yeah. Came right through the screen. And returning regular, we've brought her into the fold, Georgie Howe.
I'm so honored to be a part of the crew. Blushing.
You can never escape us now.
No. Oh, thank you. I'm very honored to be here. Hello, everyone.
And actually, for listeners of the Wheel Talk podcast, if you also read the Wheel Talk newsletter, Georgie's taking over the newsletter for me for a couple weeks. So that first installment is going to be out today as the podcast is released, and I can't wait to read it.
Yeah, I think you might come to regret that, Abby, considering certain sections that you love so dearly are not going to be in there.
There are definitely readers who are going to be really excited not to have Taylor Swift thrown at them every week.
To be fair, it's always at the bottom, so, you know.
Yeah, it's at the bottom, it's short, and sometimes I use it to introduce people to other new music. Like I tie in. And my biggest regret about handing you the newsletter is that there's a new Haim song coming out tomorrow, and that is an easy tie.
Yeah, well, I love them as well.
Yeah, me too.
Oh, great.
I'm not so much a fan of Taylor, but I am a fan of them.
Okay, well, we're going to work on that.
Give it a few years, Georgie. Trust me. It's inevitable.
I've converted both of them.
Yeah.
Just surrender.
No.
It'll be easier for you.
I won't. I was away to Girls Weekend this past weekend and they're all Taylor Swift fans and they even offered to help me write that section of the newsletter. And I was staunch in my refusal. Said nope. Gonna go in.
I'll break you. It'll happen. Even my cousin, who is very, very Taylor Swift, I've convinced them. They were singing a song to themselves the other day and their partner videoed it. And I was like, oh, we used to have fights about Taylor Swift and now they're got it stuck in their head.
Yeah, well, hey, there was a job that came up at the Kansas City Chiefs. So, you know, might have to become a Taylor Swift fan.
It would be in the contract.
Maybe.
All right, let's talk Strade Bianche. It was quite the race. Super warm conditions meant that the roads were really dry and dusty, and because of that, there were a lot of crashes, a lot of punctures. It took a lot of people out of contention, like Kasia Niewedoma, who went down on a road section. And fortunately, she is free of major injuries, but has some pretty nasty road rash, including on her face. So hopefully she's feeling all right, probably pretty sore, and hopefully we'll be back pretty soon. But that definitely meant that she wasn't in the finale, which I think, given how she's raced at Strade in the past, and I don't know how her condition is, but she said in a statement after the race that she was feeling pretty good. So bummer for all of us watching at home. We also saw riders like Elise Longoborghini drop out due to gastro issues. Another big loss to the action, I believe. On the first passage of the Tolfe, there was an attack by Mavi Garcia, and a pretty strong group went with her, including Evita Music, which will be crucial in a second, Femke Gerritsen, and Yara Kastelijn. Pauline Ferrand-Prévot, who at that point in the race was out of teammates to help her, bridged to the group up front with Kim Lacourt and Uno X rider. So that was like pretty critical in the makeup of the rest of the race, having Evita and Pauline Ferrand-Prévot, and we'll talk about it, obviously. That was with 40 kilometers to go. They got up to a minute and a half at one point from a very, very reduced peloton of about 20. With 18 kilometers to go, Juliette Labous got on the front for Demi and did an awesome lead out basically for Demi to attack over sector 12. She was followed by Puck Pieterse and unfortunately dropped her chain, which kind of held her up for a second and allowed a couple riders to get back on, including Labous, Anna van der Breggen, Niamh Fisher-Black, Noemi Ruig. And they kind of rode together for a little bit. They joined the group out front with 16 kilometers to go. And it was like the best Demi we've ever seen. She basically attacked over the top of everybody, was followed by Anna van der Breggen. Labous and PFP were able to follow them, and then she attacked again with 11.7 kilometers to go. Anna van der Breggen followed, and that was kind of the the deciding move. The two of them rode to the finish together, and on the final climb up to Piazza del Campo, Van der Breggen just could not hang on Demi. PFP, Labus, and Yara Kastlein were the chase. They were caught by Pug Peterse, Niamh Fisher-Black, and the Uno X rider, whose name is escaping me right now. Her last name is Edseth. And Pauline Ferrand-Prévot sprinted in for third, the last spot on the podium. They were a minute 42 behind the winners. I did write that down. Normally I go off memory, but my memory on like 2 hours of sleep, not great.
I could, even like 14 months postpartum, I would have to write down everything. And when I did my recaps, I wrote down everything, and I think I like the replay 3 times. So you're doing great. That was a great breakdown.
Thank you.
There's a lot to talk about.
Yeah, there's a ton to talk about. And I think the number one thing for me after watching this race that we need to discuss is FDJ-Suez and Demi Vollering, because FDJ-Suez was clearly the strongest team in the race. Normally we have SD Worx Pro Time as the out and out strongest team with the 1, 2, 3 favorites. They have a bunch of options, but going into this race, they really only had Van der Breggen, and even Van der Breggen wasn't quite backing herself for a win. I think maybe she was internally, and she wasn't saying that outward, and she's never really been one to be like, yeah, I can win today to the media. So her pre-race interview, she said that the team didn't have a race favorite, which meant that they could race the race a little bit differently. And we saw a lot of different tactics from SD Worx than we did at, say, Omloop. The two were not the same team. Like, they're not comparable. But it meant that, yeah, the strongest team in the race was definitely FDJ-Suez. And other teams had a bad day. Canyon SRAM, Zonda Crypto, they had a really bad day. UAE Team ADQ had a really bad day. So other teams that were expecting to be really strong this season, they just weren't there, and it was a combination of factors. But FDJ-Suez, they had 3 riders in the finale, and they used them perfectly. Like, they got Avita Music up the road, so there was somebody when Demi eventually went. Even if Labus hadn't been on one of the best days of her life, they still would have had Avita up the road. But Labus was riding so well. Like, if she hadn't been riding for Demi, she probably could have landed herself on the podium. She was riding so well. So they had her as well, and they basically had, 3 riders that we know are leaders in their own way, riding in support of one of them, and they won. It's like bike racing 101 tactics. And the difference between how the team supported Demi and how much support she had from other strong riders on the team, which is not something we see at SD Worx Pro Time last year, for example, and Demi's demeanor crossing the finish line, like, even when she's won races with SD Worx Pro Time, we don't see that much just pure joy from her. Like, she was hugging Stephen, the team manager, lovely guy. Look, I slept 2 hours last night, so listeners, just deal with this. They were hugging at the finish line. She was so excited. She was looking for her teammates. They were all hugging each other. And that's not really something we've seen from Demi last year, the last couple years with SD Worx. So it was just such a stark contrast to the Demi that we've seen in the past. And like we said when she signed for FDJ-Suez, that being in a team environment that welcomed her emotion was going to be good for her. And it was just obvious at the finish line of Strade Bianche this weekend.
Yeah, I agree. I think Demi on and off the bike is a different Demi to 2024. It feels like she has the freedom to be herself in a lot of ways. I feel her social media presence has like kicked up 10 notches or something. Like, she's really felt on social media. She even has like a LinkedIn presence, which she didn't have last year. She's very quick to react to all different things that are happening now online. That's just sort of a little takeaway from me. But yeah, I agree with you. It was a really nice win. She was clearly the strongest on the day. I think Anna did everything right. She put herself in a position to be there at the end with Demi. And a key part of that was that move that she made on that descent, where actually Kim Lecourt saw what was going to happen and surged over the top, got on Anna's wheel, and I thought, well, this is perfect. Kim's a mountain biker, so and we know how great Anna is. So the likelihood of maybe there being a gap was likely. And then Anna just gapped everyone and gave herself the perfect opportunity to just get that little bit of an edge on Demi, because then Demi obviously had to do the work to get across to her, and then Anna was able to sort of follow from there. So yeah, really strong ride from Anna, and it's crazy to think that she's just, what has it been, 3 years since she was racing, and is this the second race or third race for Anna? Second. I think she's just done Valencia. So to think that she's coming second at Strade Bianche and almost matching Demi. I mean, you could see Demi was clearly confident and was backing herself. That's the other thing. I feel like the way that Demi is just riding now, she just looks so comfortable and at ease, and she has such trust in her teammates that it's like she's not worried. She just knows all she has to do. She had a plan, was to just follow through that plan. There was that one point where she tried to attack and I think she lost her chain or something. Didn't stress her out. She knew she had another opportunity to go again and to get that gap and go for the win. And I'm sure if a small group had come to the finish anyway, Demi still would have been the rider to beat up that final climb. But for me, a big takeaway as well was just how fantastic Lebu is riding. And you could see that in the training camp when FDJ-Suez was sharing some videos of Demi and Juliet training together. And I couldn't help but think on Saturday, I mean, these wins are great for FDJ-Suez, but I would love, and I'm hoping we see Lebu get a chance now, because I really feel like she could have been a potential winner on the weekend had they say race for them. And I know that's maybe, it's not a controversial take, but it's just like, I was looking at the start list for Binda, and I know it's not finished yet, but like that's another World Tour race, and I see Demi's on the list again, and I'm just wondering in the schedule, like, does Lebu get her chance in the Ardennes? What's her form going to be like then? Because she's been going so well for such a long period now.
I think this is where we might see FDJ-Suez's leadership breakdown, because at the end of the day, they are a French team. So they're riding super well right now, but I feel like at a certain point, if we do see a rift in the team, it's going to be because their French riders are on a level with Demi, and so they hand leadership over to them, and Demi isn't quite as good at sharing leadership as like Van der Breggen, for example.
Yeah, it's funny. I talked about this in the newsletter actually, so spoiler for those who want to read it after this. But I think Van der Breggen, as you say, Abby, is a democratic leader in the sense that like it's a give and take leadership. So like I lead today, and then tomorrow like you get to lead. And it doesn't knock her ego, because I actually don't think she has an ego. I think she's got confidence. I don't think she's got an ego. Whereas Demi, I can't say. I would say she likes to be the leader. But Lebu was riding so strongly, and then at the end, even there was an exchange between the two of them, and Demi was like you rode so strong, and your time will come. And Lebu was like, yeah, look, it will be soon. And Demi's like, yeah, exactly, it will be soon. So I think there is an acknowledgement that they will be sharing at some point. And it will be up to the leadership as how they handle that, because I think they're well aware that if they handle it poorly, it could severely break down what had happened, because that was such a well-oiled machine that we saw at Strade. And if there was any doubt or any chink in the armor of the commitment to that team plan, it would have gone to shit. Yeah, I think they have to be very careful as to how they handle it, but I think they will spread the leadership. They'll have to at some point through the season.
I like that you brought up that little interaction that they had after the race, that the broadcasters managed to catch just that very small exchange of words, but it was like, yeah, it's coming soon. I thought that was really interesting because, yeah, it's like, what does that really mean? It's like, obviously Demi is still much better in general compared to pretty much everyone else. And like, you have to strategically get her to win as many races as you can. But at the end of the day, the whole team vibe and the way that they build trust is to share it around a little bit on races that aren't as crucial. So I think that, yeah, it's going to be interesting to see where those other opportunities lie for the other riders. Yeah, I think we've said it lots of times that Anna van der Breggen's character is much more generous, for lack of a better word, or maybe that is the best word for her in terms of the way she rides. How I found her riding on the weekend was really interesting because, as Loren said, she didn't do anything wrong, but she rode way more at the end than she actually needed to. But that was because that's Anna. That, like, I think I said it in the commentary, that why is she riding so much? I think it's because of her integrity. I think maybe because of what's happened between Vollering and Van der Breggen was a reason why she rode a little bit more than what she actually needed to or should have. Maybe she was feeling that pressure and the optics of it, even, to be like, well, I don't want to just sit on Vollering and then still get beaten. I'd rather just ride with a bit of honor. But I think that Anna was always like that anyway. So I found that dynamic quite interesting, in that she actually could have just sat on Vollering all the way into the finish in those last 10K and tried to go for the win, but she didn't. She decided to ride with Vollering, and knowing that she wouldn't have it on that final climb. So yeah, I thought that was also something that I found interesting, was how those two rode together going into the final.
Yeah, and into that final left turn as well, when Van der Breggen just closes the door.
Yeah. Do you think there's a bit of psychological tactics going on? Like she's like
there's always psychological tactics
but
going
like
on, Loren.
she's the silent assassin in a way. And Anna Van der Breggen, she never gives anything away on or off the bike. Like, she's such a hard rider to read, like, when you're watching her, because she just doesn't look like it's hard to know when she's really suffering. But I think it was in Valencia, and now I feel like the Tour de France is still a few months away, but I know it's in the back of everyone's mind, spectators, teams, athletes. And I just feel, to Gracie's point, that it's a bit like, I'm here now. It's only March. I've only been on the bike for this long. It's race number 2, but she's sending a message in a way. Whether she's doing it consciously or subconsciously, it's sending a message to Demi.
Yeah, she's
like, I'm here.
I'm not riding out of fear. I'm not riding defensively. Yep. Let's just have fun.
Yeah.
And yeah, I'm not scared of you.
You could see when Demi came around her, like, Anna didn't even react. She led into the climb. She knew it was going to happen. But I think it was a power move in the sense that, this is her 3rd race back, and she's already there. Imagine what happens.
Yep.
Liège. You know,
I'm with Abby on her prediction from a few weeks ago. I reckon Anna for a potential win in the Ardennes, and imagine if it was Flesh,
or even like Dwars or something like that.
Yeah.
She's. I mean, we saw in Hageland, like, she's clearly still got the cobbles, like the cobble ability in her. Like, she fully split that group in the last like 3Ks of Hageland.
Yeah, and I was talking to one of my friends who's a DS, and she said that in Hageland, like, you could just tell that was a training race.
Yeah.
Like, she didn't go into that race with anything other than testing herself against the peloton, and also just like getting some really good training in. But I feel like maybe there was a part of her working with Demi that was also just, she was okay racing for second. Like, she was working with Demi so well from the get-go, really, because the group behind you didn't know, like, if they were going to work together well. It was a pretty big group at a certain point, like 5 riders at a certain point. And if they'd worked well together to close that gap, then Van der Breggen would have been racing for like 6th or 7th. And so she was like, okay, well, I'm fine riding for second. I'm fine, like, helping Demi get farther away, knowing that I will be guaranteed second place, versus having to race against the others. And I think in that group behind, like, we have to talk about PFP, because I was not prepared to eat my words this early in the season about her coming back into the road peloton. And I think she had perfect tactics getting up the road early, so that she was already up front when the hard attacks happened. Like, I don't think she would have been able to match Demi or Anna when they attacked in the final 20K. So for her getting up the road was the smartest option. So she was in front of that. But also the fact that she was able to get up the road. A lot of that had to do with the peloton was so reduced at that point that there weren't really enough teams to be able to react. FDJ-Suez wasn't going to be worried about PFP getting up the road because they had a Vita in that group. And like, yeah, if we'd had like Canyon Strams onto Crypto, for example, in that group, then maybe they would have pulled it back with PFP up there. But when I was watching the race and I was looking at this group off the front, I was like, holy crap. Like they let Kim LaCourte, PFP, like those two riders off the front, like I would never.
I think it goes to your point though, Abby, like Canyon weren't there and Trek had severe bad luck with their team car driving into a field and Lizzie not getting a wheel and like people having, like Anna Henderson punctured at a bad time before the coverage started, so she never got back on. So it's like, we know Trek would have pulled that back had they been there as well. So it was like a happy coincidence in that respect. But I do think it was a bit of a blight to let PFP go up the road, and it wasn't disrespectful so much. It was just like, this is slightly concerning, given that it's also on gravel and it is the closest race to her discipline that she's come from.
Not to mention Kim LaCourte.
Yeah, and Kim
Kim in the end ran out of legs, but I mean, based on how well she's been going this season, she's a mountain biker too. Two mountain bikers up the road.
More gravel in this edition than any other.
Yeah, it was a really strong group. The composition was actually perfect. That, you know, I guess like going back to the point that Demi always had the plan to make a move where she did. And
she had Labou
always.
And she had Labou
exactly.
there. Like, if she didn't have Labou, would that have come back?
Yeah.
Then we'd be looking at a PFP victory, and I would really be having to apologize. Man.
I think also we need to talk about, when we think of the numbers games, how well Jaco Lula raced. They, at one point, I think, 4 riders in that front group?
They had the most riders in the top 20 of any team, I think.
Yeah, that's the best.
Other than FDJ,
we've seen them in terms of numbers in a race like that for a while.
Yeah, and it was good to see like Marvi getting up the road. I was listening to another competing pod who also lamented at the fact that the men's race started with 80 Ks into the race, so they missed so much of the race, and they're like, oh, this sucks. So much happened before the coverage started. And I was like, welcome to the world of women's cycling. But,
yeah, seriously.
Yeah. But they were just like, they were making a good point. It's like when Marvi's in a breakaway with you, it's good for you because you know she's going to be doing 70% of the work. So like,
and she did.
Like
she did.
It might have been a happy coincidence with the timing of the camera when they got onto that group, but every time I saw, it was either PFP or Marvi on the front pulling, and you had everyone else either like taking short turns or just sitting on. But I mean, Gracie, you were commentating, so you tell me.
Oh yeah, not surprising to see Marvi doing so much work. Pauline overrode it, and you could see how motivated she was to keep that group going, despite having a few passengers for most of that time. So I think I agree with Abby that it was a good move for her to get into that group, but I think she could have ridden the group a little bit smarter, or just not ridden quite as hard for herself. But, you know, like they were still trying to get that advantage. So that's a bit of a tricky situation to be in. And some of those riders like Gerritzer and Music, they didn't have to work, and there's A cards behind. So there's only so much bullying you can do to get those kind of people to work, because they're just not. And then you have to talk about Pauline's crash as well. That was interesting.
Pretty spectacular.
It didn't seem to disrupt the group too much, a little bit, but like she got up so quickly. That was impressive. But there's often crashes in Strade. It's like every year people forget that the tarmac roads are actually still super slippy for a few reasons. Like, I think the road surfaces there for some reason are more slippery. Like whenever I've trained in Tuscany and raced, they feel way more dangerous. I don't know if it's like the olive oil on the road from all the olive grove trees. But you've also got a lot more dust on your tires from those gravel sectors. Your tire pressure is different than what it would be in a regular road race. Like there's a bunch of factors. And then Pauline obviously has pretty good skills, and maybe she just got a little bit excited. You could see she was taking not like unnecessary risks, but she was definitely like wanting to push it and go first in the group, going into descents and stuff like that. So we saw Pogačar have almost the same crash and worse. So it's nothing to do with a skill set. It was just like a bad moment, a few factors that led into that moment, and a bit of overconfidence. So it's amazing how quick she got back up, and she didn't seem that flustered by it. But yeah, I guess my overall observation was that she just overrode it a little bit, but she had a great day. Like, she looked good. She looked comfortable. She looked calm. She was always in such good position all day. And yeah, that's probably my mostly what I was thinking watching that breakaway.
I'm trying to look up. Georgie, do you know what tires Jayco Alula rides?
Well, the maximum tires we can run in my beautiful Live Envy bike that I have over there. Product placement.
Subtle.
But the max we can run are 30s or 32s.
But what brand? Because I just like, we don't really do tech, but like, I'm so curious about
what they would run,
the numbers that Jayco Alula had in the group versus like the flats that everyone else had. Like, Uno X had lost like half their team to flats, and same with Trek.
Yeah, I think I think Caroline Anderson was the only one that I saw that had a puncture in the team, but the rest were pretty smooth sailing from what I saw on socials and from what they've told me. But from memory, we run we meant to run Cadex, but Vittoria's and like the race tire, and the team, like the mechanics, do an excellent job. They troubleshoot at the end of every race. Like, they take it really seriously when there are flats. I mean, there was one Paris-Roubaix where we didn't have any mechanicals, only flat tires at all.
Wow.
When I was on UHC, we had Vittoria, and I didn't change my tires an entire year. Like, I had my training bike with the new tires on it, and I brought the bike back to team camp 1 year later with the same tires on it, and I never got a flat the entire year. And my mechanic was like, "What is wrong with you? These tires are square." And I was like, "Yeah, but I never got a flat, so I never changed them."
Yeah, I used to do the same because they had I think we were on Vittoria for nearly the whole time I was on that team, and no complaints.
No, I mean, we were, obviously they had some really, like, I mean, you need luck to not get punctures, but you also need really good equipment, and the pressures they run, they're usually dialed with them. They consult the riders. I mean, I think every team does that though. I do know that AG run inserts in their tires usually, so that might have stopped someone like Kim getting a puncture, for instance. But yeah, with the numbers that Jayco had though, from reports in the Pelo, they were like, when Marby was up the road, there was an attempt to disrupt the chase, not so respectfully apparently. So that pissed a few people off. So I mean, it's all for the listeners. Yeah, it's all right to disrupt once, but if you get told don't do it again, usually don't do it again.
Don't do it again.
Yeah.
Anyway, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt the PFP chat, but I was trying to look it up, and I just like find it so fascinating just with the numbers and the numbers of people who had flats from other teams that ride different equipment, and the numbers in the group that Liv Alula Jayco had.
It would be interesting to see.
Yeah. It's not really like this race, especially this edition, is not really like a good indicator of which teams are strongest, I feel like, just because of the amount of bad luck that happened on Saturday. Obviously Little Trek had some of the worst. Little Trek, Canyon Strams onto Crypto, UAE team and ADQ had some of the worst luck in the peloton. Those three teams were just like pretty much out of contention from the get-go. Like, Nee Fisher Black had an amazing ride to basically like solo get herself into the critical moves and land in the top 10. And Strade was in there for a bit, and she was in a move that went earlier in the coverage with when Femke Gerritsen was up the road.
Loretta Hansen actually was there quite deep into the race. I was really
she had a good ride.
Happy to see her there. She had to really step up because of her other teammates having bad luck. So I think we definitely need to give her a shout out.
Oh yeah, she had a phenomenal ride.
I think as well, a rider that you mentioned, Abby, that needs a shout out is Marta I'm going to say it wrong.
Yep.
The X rider.
Mm.
She was really there to the pointy end. So I didn't know much about her before. So of course, when you see a rider having a really good day, then you go and do a bit of a dig. And she's had some good top tens over the past couple of years, but I thought this ride was a super impressive one by her. And to Gracie's point, Loretta Hansen is in great shape again.
All the reports I'm getting from the peloton is that Uno X is on like a whole different level this year.
Oh, right.
They're riding really, really well. Riding really well together, but also just like they've signed so many young riders that are kind of finally coming into their own and like are more confident in the bunch and are able to kind of pull out some results. So they're obviously one of the teams that's in the fight for keeping their World Tour license at the end of this season, along with Roland, Human Powered Health. Like those are really the three teams that are probably going to, one or two of them is going to lose their license at the end of this year. And Uno X, it's like, I absolutely love this team because of how management is. And they've obviously got a really good maternity leave policy. They've had quite a few riders have babies on the team, and their press officer responds always within like 2 minutes, which is always like a thumbs up for me. But they're a team that like just really believes in their women and backing their young riders and has a lot of confidence in the long game. And the long game is playing out well for them this year, it seems like, so far.
Yeah. I mean, how many, I know I saw there was a huge list of DNFs in Strade.
Only 57 finished.
57 finishers.
Yeah.
Which compared to last year, there were 55 last year. But that was like the last 2 years have clearly been it's been a really, really hard race. Because in 2023, there was 74. 2022, there was 85.
Is that because they would pull the riders before they do that last lap, though?
Yeah.
Possible.
Yeah.
We haven't had that lap except for the last 2 years, so I assume that's a logical place where officials would say that you can't keep going. You have to stop and go just straight to Siena.
Yeah.
Really good point. Good catch.
Yeah, I don't know how I feel about this, the additional. I think it definitely makes the race harder, but I'm not really sure. I'm not convinced that the race needed to be any harder. Like making a race harder doesn't necessarily make it better racing. Sometimes when you have a really hard stage, like take, the Queen stage of the Giro last year, for example, it just means that the peloton is more conservative in the way that they use their energy and not really comparable to a one-day race. The two are raced so differently. But I feel like when you have a race that's as hard as Strade Bianche already, where there's just such a massive level of luck involved in the race itself, it's not really necessary to make it more challenging in the finale.
Yeah, I agree. And they have it's the same conversation for the men's race of like, when are you going to stop adding stuff? Because you're just pretty much pacifying 95% of the peloton and giving a further advantage to a handful of people that were probably going to win anyway. And now they win by a lot and it just becomes actually more boring. And, it's a similar issue in the women's race as well. I think that we're just on the edge of it still being exciting, but I wouldn't make it any harder. And I think actually if it was back to the original few courses, I think that could still be better, just for an overall more exciting finale. I'd love to see 5 riders come into that final climb up to the Piazza. I think that would be exciting. Last year we had 3, but that was because they just caught Faulkner. So I liked that. People because it's so narrow there. I love that there has to be a bit of a strategy in how you go into that final climb. And if it's just 1 or 2, it's like, it's still beautiful, but I think that we could have a really fun argy-bargy right at the end of an already dramatic race.
Which is what cycling is about. Cycling is about tactics and, that's just such a massive. If it was just like a race of your legs, then it would be
a time trial.
Just have a time trial. Yeah,
yeah.
Like
that's
huge...
fun. That's fun.
But yeah, like it's more than 50% of bike racing is tactics and numbers and that entire game. So don't make the race any harder. It's taking away from the actual sport of cycling, like the beauty of cycling, which is, the chess game.
Georgie, I've got a solution. We actually just include more time trials in the season, and
You
then
know what? More time trials than
more exciting road races, and everyone's
anything
happy.
less than 1K is a bloody prologue. Anything over that, they're like, oh, it's a time trial. But they're like, oh, Georgie, we've entered you in this race. It's got 2 time trials. One's 4K and one's 2. And I'm like, they're both prologues. So women's
maybe a time trial has to be over 15K.
Yeah, like we need to. Yeah, that was my point, Lauren. Thank you. I got my words mixed up, but yeah, I think like women's cycling does need longer time trials, but that's a topic for another time. Like we need to suffer for more than 30 minutes, I think, to call it a time trial. But I was going to make a point though, like why are all the gravel sectors at the start of the race? Like like will it change the dynamic to have them back-ended more? Because you negate 80% of the peloton in the first 30-40K of the race and it's
not even on the coverage anyway.
Correct. Like like what does that do for the race, and then what does it do for the race to then back end it?
Yeah, we missed Weebus on the front during the longest gravel sector, like splitting the peloton apart because the live coverage didn't start.
For a spectator's point of view, like you turn on the TV and you sit there for a little while, unless you've been trying to follow a live ticker or something like that. As a journalist, I'm sure that's what you need to do. But you turn it on and you go, all right, what the F happened? What's going on? I'm confused. What is happening? You spend about like 20 minutes trying to figure it out. And then like the commentators are trying to bring you up to speed with what's happened, but you miss so much. Like I just learned a whole bunch of stuff listening to you guys talk about it now on the podcast. When you're talking about the punctures, like that stuff you just miss because, and I know obviously with women's racing and even with the men's, you're never going to have the full length of the race, but you would hope that the really, really key bits of information, you get to see, I don't know, from 50K onwards or something.
I just don't think you see it though with the gravel sectors. Like I'm looking at the map, it's like they're all in the front half, like all the really long ones. Like I just don't think you see those critical moments until later.
Yeah.
Take it up with the race organization.
I know. I'm going to write a strongly worded letter. Have you guys seen White Chick? I'm going to write a strongly worded letter.
Yeah.
Good race overall. We saw, the new Demi Vollering head and shoulders above most, especially with her new team. We saw 2 riders that have come out of retirement just prove that they've not missed a beat. I think we'll talk more about Pauline Van Prevot and how her current form will translate into her tour ambitions later in the season. I'm interested to see how much of this was her being comfortable with a race like Strade versus other road races and how she'll do in other classics that she's going to line up for. I was laughing about how upright she sits on a bike. Like she sits like a mountain biker it's like her saddle height to stack height ratio is like very mountain bike-esque. And we'll definitely talk more about team dynamics as we watch more classics, because I think that this race in particular had a lot to do with the conditions. But let's wrap up our Strade talk. I have been, much like I try to get everyone to be fans of Taylor Swift, or at least just be tolerant of Taylor Swift, I also have been trying to influence readers of the Wheel Talk newsletter to become interested in cross-country skiing this year. And we had the World Championships in Trondheim, Norway all week and over the weekend. I was lucky enough to have a friend on the ground, Gretchen Powers, photographer extraordinaire. She was there taking photos for the US team and other teams. So she's got some amazing work on Instagram, and Georgie has linked her Instagram on the newsletter. But she also sent me a little audio diary from on the ground in Trondheim, Norway. So let's hear from Gretchen really quick.
Good morning. This is Gretchen Powers, and I'm reporting live from the 2025 World Championships here in Trondheim, Norway. Today, on this final day of competition, is the 50-kilometer skate race for the women. Compared to yesterday's blue skies, massive packed crowds, the atmosphere here today is definitely a bit more dreary, I would say. But the fans that are here are diehard. Like, these folks have come out to see the women duke it out. And on the final day of the World Championships, watching these women duke it out in less than ideal conditions is pretty inspiring. The weather here this week has been pretty terrible, with the exception of yesterday when Golden Boy Cabo won his 6th gold medal, so that checks out. There were over 100,000 people in the crowds. Folks had hiked in miles to access the parts of the course that were open to the public. I don't even know if this is technically public land. We're on someone's farm right now. It feels like, unsure. But it's been really remarkable to see these World Championships happen in the birthplace of the sport of cross-country skiing. And the fan base that comes out, not just for the top elite athletes from Norway, Sweden, and Finland, and the heart of Scandinavia, but also those who've traveled here from all over the world to support athletes from far-flung countries where cross-country skiing is not a household name of a sport. I still am in awe and shock and disbelief at what I experienced yesterday here. The number of fans, from baby infants in little backpacks to elderly folks in their hand-knit wool sweaters. This sport and these athletes are truly celebrated here in Norway, and that has been really remarkable to see. You can hear the roar of the crowd grow, the crescendo of noise as the athletes approach. It's the only thing really that makes it so that I know as a photographer when they're coming and when to prepare for my shots. Because otherwise right now, my line of sight is pretty small and there's a huge crowd of people in between me and the rest of the course. So I'm just looking at those people and waiting for those flags to start flying and waving in the air and the noise to get louder and louder and louder and those cowbells to be ringing so loudly that sometimes my ears feel like they're ringing for the rest of the day. I am smelling campfire smoke right now and some hot dogs are roasting close to me. We've got people drinking beers and a number of different things in thermoses that I have no idea what they are. I've seen whiskey bottles and hot tea and kids drinking cocoa and all kinds of joy. The number of hand knit sweaters as a knitter that I've seen here has been absolutely remarkable. I want to make every single one of them. And I'm currently in my head making a list, and it's taken me everything as I'm running down the course to try to get to my next spot to not stop and ask a woman what pattern that is. The really neat thing about shooting this event is being able to be within the tape. We're allowed pretty much everywhere on course as long as we are not blocking a TV camera or any of the big sponsor signs, which is truly wild to be able to watch this race from behind my lens and see these athletes that I've admired and aspired to be like and wanted to be for so long right next to them, breathing the same air. And having the snow that currently today, the snow is so soft, they're going through it very deeply and it's spraying. And so to be sprayed with snow as athletes like Therese Johaug and Heidi Weng and Jessie Diggins ski by, it's pretty freaking wild. This sport is amazing. And the grit that these athletes have, especially on a day like today, skiing a 50K, that's the longest event in World Cup racing for women. This is also the first time that the women get to do the 50K. In previous years, the men have done a 50 and the women have done a 30, but in the spirit of equality at this year's World Championships here in Trondheim, they have equaled the distance of all events as well as equaled the prize purse. And we want to see that happen at more women's sports all over the world. All right, come with me while I hike to my next photo location. Hopefully the sound of cowbells, which never really ends, is not too bad. Anyway, I've been over here for a few weeks. The first week I was here, I've been helping coach and document the story of two young El Salvadorian para-Nordic athletes who learned how to ski last year and currently have their sights set on the Milano Cortina Winter Games next year. And then I was here for their World Cup finals for para, which is a couple hours north of us here in Trondheim. And I was able to shoot the first 2 days of that before the last day was canceled because of a lack of snow and rain and really bad conditions, which have been plaguing a lot of the Nordic circuit this winter. This World Championship has included both able-bodied and para-Nordic competitions. And hopefully in the future, it's going to become even more integrated. But this year they had the sprint for the para athletes. And so I was here for that and I was shooting for the US para-Nordic team. And then when that was over, I stayed on and I've been shooting for a few different sponsors and the US ski team and Protect Our Winters. And really just working to tell the story around this sport. So not just the story of the race and the athletes and the incredible things that they can do, but the community around this.
Gretchen didn't talk results, and I won't go into it too much because no one else on this podcast probably watched the races. But it was a Swedish clean sweep of pretty much all of the races for the women. We had some riders like Frida Karlsson, who's had a really rough year, come in really, really well to win the first ever 50K mass start race that the women have ever had. It was, a huge, huge day for the women on Sunday with the 50K. The Swedes also won the team events. The team relay, the 4x7.5 team relay was incredible, like just such an incredible race. And the US team, which includes one of my favorite athletes of all time, like over any sport ever, Jessie Diggins, the US was able to come in for second in the team sprint with her teammate Julia Kern, who had a really good World Championships and has kind of come into the tail end of this season really strong. So overall, great week of skiing in Trondheim, Norway, and the crowds were unreal. So thank you so much for indulging me there.
No, I mean,
we can return.
I looked at the photos. The crowds look insane. It's kind of like cross in Belgium, like cross champs in Belgium vibes.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, like Norway, the birthplace of Nordic skiing, and they had their hero, Klæbo, on the men's side. He swept 6 out of 6 gold medals. He won every single race all week, which is completely insane. Like, won the sprint, won the 50K, and then obviously was part of the winning teams for the team events. But they had him out there, so any day he was racing, the crowds were just like massive. And it was really crazy to see and really cool for the people of Norway to have the World Championships come back, and even with the horrendous weather and just like abysmal snow conditions that they had, they still had quite the turnout from all over the world, really, of people coming to see Nordic skiing. And it's a niche sport, but I grew up doing it, so I'm a big fan, and pretty cool to see so many people into it. And I absolutely love whenever I kind of force people in the Wheel Talk verse to interact with Nordic skiing, that there's always a couple people who are interested and who are also fans, and it just brings me a lot of joy.
The thing that stuck out for me is, like, can anyone think of an athlete in another sport who could win a sprint and then win like the marathon version of that same event?
Tadej Pogacar? No, so this is a conversation that I have had multiple times with people. Is
Voss.
Like, is there an equivalent of Jessie Diggins for, like, Klæbo is his own thing. And actually I think he's like an honorary member of Uno X's men's team. I think he was at the tour riding with them on the rest day maybe. Anyway, beside the point. The Jessie Diggins, is there like any equivalent of her as an athlete and a person anywhere else in the world? And my answer is no, because like she's leading the World Cup rankings at the moment. She had a pretty bad World Championships apart from the team sprint, but like she's had an incredible season. Last season was an incredible season. So she wins all of these races, but she's also really, really open about her past struggles with eating disorders. And she highlights Eating Disorder Awareness Month every year. And she's even been open about the fact that she had a relapse, I think it was last summer, in her eating disorder. And she's also like insanely positive. She's just like always positive no matter what happens. And the 50K was the first time I think I've ever seen her, or at least in recent memory, cry. Like, seeing her at the finish line of the 50K, she was, I think, 22nd, like 17 minutes down. Like, it was a wild race. It wasn't I don't know like the circumstances of why she was so far down, because I think like in any other race she would have been at least in the top 5, if not in contention, especially in a freestyle, in a skate race. No one knows what I'm talking about right now. She also wears glitter on her cheeks when she races, and there's literally no equivalent of always wears glitter.
Like,
there's no equivalent of her.
Step off the snow, go straight to a Taylor Swift concert.
She could.
Yeah.
And I think she is a fan of Taylor Swift, because I couldn't love her anymore. But the only person I can like even kind of think that is like that amazing of a person and also that incredible across multiple disciplines or multiple distances and in their sport is Pogacar. And I wouldn't have said this like a week ago, but his response to journalists saying that he was the first world champion to win Strade, and it was like an automatic for him to be like, no, Lauda won last year, which Lizzie Dagnan was the first world champion to win Strade, and Annemiek van Vleuten has won it since in the rainbow jersey. So he's the fourth person to win Strade, first male to win Strade in the rainbow jersey. But that his like automatic reaction was that the work that he does with charities, like that he is just like the Pogacar hair poof. I don't know, and like how good he is at both classics races, one day races, and tours. I feel like he's the only comparable. He hasn't been open about having an eating disorder, but that's not a prerequisite, obviously.
But he can't. But like in a sprint, we're going to go down the rabbit hole with this because
we've already done it.
Because the equivalent would be someone who can win a bunch sprint, who can win a time trial, who can win one of the hardest mountain stages. That is someone who can do it all.
Which was Marina Vos, 2012.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Does she wear glitter, guys?
No.
Well, she might nowadays.
And she's like...
But fun fact for the Aussies in the chat, this rung a bell because I was riding with my best friend who also used to Nordic ski, Abby, before she got into rowing. And she was like, Georgie, it was wild. Like this young Australian went overseas and she was at the World Championships and she won our first ever Nordic skiing medal at the U23 World Championships. And it was Rosie Fordham. So she's Australia's first ever international cross-country skiing medal at a U23 World Ski Championships.
Nice.
So you won silver in the 10K interval skating race. Yeah.
There you go.
I don't know what that is, but there you go.
Yeah, Aussies are a long way back in alpine sports.
Yeah. That's a big deal. Stephen Bradbury and Rosie Fordham.
I actually have a friend who went to the Olympics for Nordic skiing for Australia.
Oh, really?
Fun fact.
Yeah. What I was going to say earlier was my dad was super into Nordic skiing when he was in his 20s. And yeah, there was like no funding back then for Australian snow sports. Downhill is a different story. And he qualified for the Olympics and they decided not to take any Nordic skiers and they took more downhill races that year. So he was pretty devastated. And I think that's why I didn't do a lot of skiing growing up.
Oh, no. It was dead to him after that. Oh.
A little bit.
Anyway, the ski season's almost over, so I'll stop going on about it eventually.
We can circle this. We can loop this back into cycling. And Abby, you probably know a bit more about this, but I think there's talk about having cross at the Winter Games.
There is
point in the future.
There has been talk, yeah, for a few years now.
But I think that like they're having
cool.
meetings about it now. Like I think it's a lot closer than it's ever been.
It'd be huge.
That'll be good for the sport because it's been dying a little bit. So if you can make it more worldwide, it would be a really, really good thing for the sport.
If they can have skimo in the Winter Olympics, they can have cyclocross in the Winter Olympics.
Skimo is sick.
Skimo is sick. Skimo sprint is weird as. Why do they wear backpacks?
I don't know. You might.
They're
need
doing
something.
like a 6-minute effort.
Hey,
less than that.
Hey, you know what? Never question training for a 6-minute effort. We did 30 hours of training a week for a 6-minute effort as a rower. So
okay, valid.
Yeah.
Valid. Anyway, all right. This has been a really fun tangent. And I feel like these are always the ones that we get the most comments on from listeners. So I'm really excited to dive into the Discord after this episode is released. Up next on the cycling side, we've got Trofeo Alfredo Binda on the 16th. It's one of my favorite early season races because it's so unpredictable. The new course starts in, actually, Georgie, you did a preview for this race in the newsletter. You want to give us like a snippet of the preview?
I can even talk you guys through the town because I van packed my way through that town couple of years ago around the Italian lake, just hired like one of the little camper vans and was driving around. It's torrential rain.
Nice.
But they are like Lunio on the shores of Lake Maggiore are famous for their Wednesday markets. They're not racing on a Wednesday, so the girls might have to wait till next week to go to that. But the race does start there. And they've got a new edition this year where they go along the shores. They do like an extra lap around the town before they head up into the first climb, which is called Maschiago Primo. So it's 6Ks at about 4%. And then after that, they descend towards Italian pronunciation is shocking. Sitiglio.
Titilio.
That's the one.
Titilio.
I'm not lucky. I'm not commentating on SBS, Gracie. That's your job. Pronounce the town names. Before they do the laps around the town characteristic of the race. So yeah, they'll face 2 climbs within those laps. First, the Cascalite climb, which is about 800 meters at 7%. So a really great launch pad there. And then they go into the Orino climb, which is a bit longer at 2.5 Ks at 4.8%. It's a weird race. It's been won different ways in the past. Like Marina Voss won it from a reduced bunch sprint, as well as Elisa Balsamo. But it has been won solo by both Longo Borghini and Shirin Ben Androy in previous years. So it kind of gives a bit of everything. The riders do have a bit more of a warm-up before they head into the first climbs of the day. So maybe we'll see an early break go. But it's an interesting one. Full start list hasn't been released yet to my knowledge. But I think we'll see, Van der Breggen. We'll see the likes of Demi, Garcia, Balsamo, and Longo Borghini on the start line, I would imagine.
Yeah, this is an interesting one because it can be won so many different ways. It just really depends on how teams decide to race it. And Balsamo has won multiple times from a reduced sprint because Little Trek have been committed to making sure that the pace isn't hard enough for her to get dropped, and also bringing back any moves that went. I remember I think it was last year, Niamh Fisher-Black was riding like super well for SC Works Pro Time. We had some really good moves from Cecilia Tripp-Ludwig, for example, multiple times in this race. She always seems to come in really well. Kassia's win at this race when the weather was just a torrential downpour, and I think it was 2018, is maybe one of my favorite finales of a bike race ever. Watching her just descend in the rain and her move in that race. So it's one of my favorite races just because it's so unpredictable and can be so exciting. Like, I feel like even if it does come down to a reduced bunch sprint, there's always top riders attacking on those circuits that make it worth watching. And even if those riders are not going to win the race, they're showing their form for races coming up that are more suited to their style of rider. So when we get to the Flanders of it all, so it's a race worth watching. Every one of them is, but I think this year going to be a particularly interesting edition because we have riders that are top riders targeting other events that are sitting out races like this. Like obviously we had, top riders like Kopecky sitting out Omloop at Nieuwsblad, which we would never have seen 2 years ago. And so the start list isn't out, but I am curious how that's going to impact the start list here, because in years past this has kind of become a second tier World Tour race, where we don't get a lot of the top riders showing up for it. And so we're going to have a good combo of like top big names and other riders who are keen to prove themselves. Like maybe this will be a race for a Vita Music or a Juliette Labous, for example. Like if Demi's going to hand over leadership at any point, it's going to be, this race. So yeah, a really good race coming up on the weekend. And then next week we'll preview Milan San Remo or whatever they're calling it. Yeah. It's not Milan San Remo because it doesn't start in Milan, but
Genoa.
Yeah. What is it going to look like with Demi riding for someone else? We haven't seen that in recent years.
No, but I think, I don't know. She's so strong. Like if she put that energy toward a teammate, it would be just such a massive advantage for that teammate to have. But can she do it is another question.
If she does it now, it's an investment for the rest of the season.
100%.
Yeah. This is a point Gracie made with Anna van der Breggen last week that was right on point, like what she was doing in the Hageland. I can't remember the the phrase you coined, Gracie, but basically like paying your chips now, something like that.
Yeah, she's making an investment in the rest of the season.
Yeah, because going back to the point I made about Anna and the rest of the season, you know, there'll be little breadcrumbs about the Tour de France Femme, but she's going to need the team we see now. She's going to need that team in July to win that race.
Yeah.
Yeah.
She has, I mean, she can't. Have you guys seen the Vuelta route as well? Like the courses this year are going to.
I was going to say the Vuelta route was just announced.
Yeah, that looks.
Is she racing the Vuelta?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Demi. Ooh. It starts in Valencia. I might have to go to the start of that one.
It starts in Barcelona.
And
in Barcelona?
Yeah, there's a team time trial in Barcelona, I think.
Oh, I thought it was Valencia. I'm definitely going to that race.
They love a team time trial.
I'm scarred from my team time. Yeah, I crashed in our team time trial in Valencia, actually.
Oh, no.
Put out on a corner and I had our GC rider on our wheel. Luckily, she went around the other way.
Oh, no. Yeah, actually, Loren, if you want to go, you can come visit because there's a couple stages that are really close to me.
Awesome. Well, it starts on a Sunday the 4th. Yeah, that could work. Potentially a weekend in Barcelona. Not bad.
Yeah,
in May.
Let's do it.
It's warm.
Stay at my place.
It's not that far for you to come down, Abby.
No, I'll definitely come. I was literally looking at it this morning, plotting bringing my older daughter down because she is a really big fan of Brodie Chapman.
Oh, well, I don't know which riders are going to be doing it, but I did have a discussion last week about which races I would go to. And my new boss has never been to the Vuelta for women, so he's probably pretty keen to go check it out. And Barcelona, that's easy. Doesn't mean hiring cars or anything.
And you'll get more interaction with the riders at something like a team time trial as well, because, you know, they're not
exactly
on the race.
I'm going to put it in the calendar.
Yes.
For
All
sure.
right, let's wrap up this. We'll definitely talk more about the Vuelta to come and excited to talk more bike racing next week, but let's wrap this episode up with some quick obsessions. Anyone?
I said I was going to talk about my book. I won't go into too much detail, but I actually wrote down the name so I wouldn't forget it. Is anyone else like me? They read a whole book and then they forget what the title was?
Yeah, I did that last week. And it's like my favorite book of all time and I still got it wrong.
Yeah.
Wow.
Well, the book that I've been reading, and I'm coming close to the finish now, is City of the Nightbirds. Has anyone read it? It's about a Russian ballet dancer, and I'm pretty sure it's set in modern times because she has a phone. So, and it's just, it's been a really nice read about the intricacies of being a woman, living in St. Petersburg and navigating that sort of world. She comes into ballet just sort of not by accident, but her aunt was a ballet dancer, and she starts quite late, and she's just a very naturally gifted dancer. And yeah, it's just about her journey, and I don't know, I'm just really enjoying it. It's a nice story, and I kind of relate to her perfectionism and how it's been a bit of a downfall. But yeah, it's a book from Reese Witherspoon's book club, and I have actually all my recent books have come off that list, and they're pretty good, must say.
I'll go next. So it is a musical obsession, Abby. It's not Taylor though. No, I've kind of rediscovered my my love for sets, like musical sets. So getting back on my SoundCloud. And there's a Australian producer called Flow Music. And they produce these sets called 333 or like 333, and they're 3 hours long, 33 minutes, 33 seconds. And they get like artists in to basically play those sets. And there's one at the moment called by a guy called DJ Be Kind to Other People that I'm absolutely loving at the moment. So I've been rinsing that today, and yeah, can link it in the show if anyone else likes musical sets. But yeah, it's just a nice one to chill out to. There's another one by a guy called Gum. He's a Melbourne DJ. Gum with two M's, and it's also really good. But it's just nice. It really relaxes me. I forgot how much it does.
Yeah, I love a good set.
Yeah. I'll send it to you, Gracie.
Please. I've been reading a good book called Rodham, and it's not that new anymore. I think it was written 4 or 5 years ago, but I finally got around to reading it. And it's based on, it's a fictionalized story of if Hillary Clinton didn't become Mrs. Clinton if she didn't marry Bill, and her kind of rise as a very smart young woman. And I'm only, I don't know, a quarter of the way in, but it's well written, and I'm not obsessed with American politics, but I've definitely been paying a lot of attention for obvious reasons. So it's I don't know, it's just like a different lens, different way in that it's not like real news media that can often be a bit terrifying at the moment. So it feels like I'm getting a little bit of an education and a fix from fiction.
That's good. Because it's her maiden name, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Hillary Rodham.
That sounds really interesting. That's like the alternative histories are fascinating.
Yeah, I was going to say
mine is going to be
could say Handmaid's Tale. I won't.
Yeah, Handmaid's Tale, The Man in the High Castle.
Oh.
Yeah, I can't deal very well with dystopian stuff, but I've also just started watching Severance. So I don't know if that's like
Ooh, my sister told me to watch this. Is it good?
Yeah, I'm a bit hooked. I'm only a few episodes in, but like part of me is like, do I really want to watch this? Because sometimes dystopian stuff really gets me down, like Handmaid's Tale. So we'll see how we go.
Yeah.
Mine is going to be so random. But I got some yesterday and I slept in them overnight and I'm just like really excited. Flat back earrings. So, like the normal earring back that's like, got the loops and stuff. I've been having a really big problem with them getting pulled out, various toddler activities and babies grabbing hair and etc. So my sister has flat back earrings and I've always been curious. So I ordered myself some and they are amazing. Like sleeping in them is incredible. Cause I'm a never ever take my earrings out type of person. And I've got like 9 earrings. So sleeping, like they've never bothered me before because I'm so used to it. But the flat back earrings, I'm like, oh my God, this is what it feels like to sleep without earrings jamming into your head. So that's what
I'm so happy
with.
for you, Abby. I've been having those targeted ads. I'm very tempted to buy some too because I only wear hoops because I hate that feeling of being jabbed by my earrings. And I've been thinking about buying
flatbacks.
I haven't worn earrings in 5.5 years.
Yeah, I'm still persevering, but I feel like my days are numbered.
Yeah.
Once Noah can grab those hoops.
Yeah, he does sometimes and I had one fall out the other day and I was like, oh my God, what if he ate it? Because I couldn't find it. And I was like, what if he's eaten it? Is that what's it going to do? So
I mean, as long as he swallows it with no problem. But then I don't know about coming out the other end. That might be painful.
Yeah. I did find it. If anyone wants to know the end of that story. But I was like, maybe I should just stop wearing them for that reason.
All right. Well, thanks everyone for listening to the Wheel Talk podcast. We will be back next week to talk Binda and preview the new Milan San Remo, the new women's version of Milan San Remo, where we'll have Lotte Kopecky making her season debut. Pretty exciting. Thanks you three for the chat.